Okay, so for the LM curve two, we are just talking about the various. It's just the locus of points of the various equilibrium levels of interest rate and then income. Okay, that ensures equilibrium in the money market. Okay, so when we go to the money market, we have the equilibrium R and Y whenever money demand is equal to money supply. Okay, and from the onset, we said that money supply is taken as exogenous because it is set by the central bank, so it is out of control of this model. But money demand, when we went through the liquidity preference theory, we saw that money demand depended on interest rate and then the level of income. Okay, so when you see the money demand function or equation, you will see that there is a component of interest rate and then income. And we said it is positively related to income, which means with an increase in the individual's income, we tend to hold more money or demand more money. And then for interest rates, we also saw that it is inversely related to money demand. So with a higher interest rate, people rather go in for interest yielding assets. But when interest rates are low, then they tend to hold money instead. Okay. So the LM schedule comes from the money market. Okay, so that is where we can get the LM curve. So if we try to vary the level of income, when we change income, there's a disequilibrium in the money market. Whenever there's a change in income, you see that it's going to affect the money demand, which means there's going to be a disequilibrium. There will be excess demand for money over the supply of money. So, what should be done to bring the market back to equilibrium? When you increase the interest rate, it serves as incentive for people to buy interest yielding assets, which means that they will be demanding less money just to restore equilibrium. Or you can also talk about it in this sense that when there is excess demand for money, people will try to get rid of the money. And how do they do that? They will only do that by what? By buying bonds. Okay. And as they buy bonds, the price of bonds will fall and then the interest rate will go up. So whenever there's an increase in the level of income, the interest rate must rise just to restore equilibrium. So when we join the various changes in income and then the corresponding interest rate, that is what gives us the LM schedule. Okay. So now this is what let's use a diagram. Okay. Now, given a certain quantity of money supply, we said it is exogenous, so it doesn't depend on anything in this model. So we take it as a constant, the money supply, okay? And then this is our money demand. It is like this because it is negatively related to interest rate, okay? So assuming that income y zero, the money demand was MDY zero and the interest rate was R0. Okay, so this is point A, the equilibrium point in the money market. Now, just assuming we increase the income level from Y0 to Y1, there's going to be a disequilibrium in the market. Okay, because this is where the equilibrium was. Now, because of the increase in income, there's going to be an increase in money demand. So the money demand curve will shift upwards. So before equilibrium can be restored, the interest rate must rise from R0 to R1. So when we join the new value of R1, R and then the Y, then we get our point B. If we have to increase income again, it means money demand is going to increase, causing an upward shift in the money demand curve. And before equilibrium can be restored, interest rate must rise. And when we join those 2 points, we are getting point C. So the locus of points through this equilibrium points in the money market gives us the LM schedule or LM curve. Okay. So this is how we derive the LM curve. Any question? Okay. All right, so this is what I was talking about. Whenever there's an increase in Y, it causes an endogenous increase in R. Okay, the interest rate must increase. And this results from the fact that money demand is supposed to go up because it is positively related to income. So when income goes up, then money demand will go up. So that is causing a disequilibrium. So the new level of interest rate needed to bring the money market back into equilibrium. When we join those 2 points, that is where we get our LM curve. So the first point on the LM curve was point A, the R0, Y0. Then income increased from Y0 to Y1. So interest rate to had to increase from R0 to R1. So this was the point B, and then this is point C. So what this means is that at higher levels of income, we also have higher interest rates. Okay, and the result is that we need a higher interest rate to restore the money market back into equilibrium. Okay, so that's the reason why the LM curve is uh, upwards. Okay, it moves from left to right upwards, which means that whenever there's an increase in income, there's supposed to be a corresponding increase in the level of interest rate. Okay. Okay, so this just like the first one that we saw. Alright. Okay, so if you remember when we were talking about the IS curve, we discussed this thing there, what will make the curve steep or less steeper. And we said the IS curve depended on the interest elasticity of investment. Interest elasticity of investment. How investment was sensitive to changes in interest rate. And we saw that when investment is inelastic, that is less sensitive, then the curve tends to be steeper. Okay, the reason is that whenever there's an increase in income or output in the output market, interest rate must really rise before equilibrium could be restored. That was why the curve was steeper. When you come to the LM curve too, the steepness depends on the interest elasticity of money demand. We know that per Keynes, unlike those old people who said that money didn't depend on interest rates, for Keynes, he stated the negative relationship between money demand and then the interest rate. Okay, so if we say that investment is interest sensitive or more interest elastic, it means that the level of money demand really responds to changes in interest rate. If you want a very small percentage increase in demand for money, you just need to increase your decrease your interest rate by a very small margin. Okay, assuming the interest rate changes by 20%, it's more possible the money demand will change by say 50%, but it is very responsive to changes in interest rate. So now, assuming there's an increase in income, okay, if there's an increase in income, we know it is going to affect the money demand curve. Uh, if there's an increase in income, it causes an upward shift in the money demand curve, which means there's a disequilibrium in the market. You have to increase interest rate to discourage people from holding money. But so if the money demand is very sensitive to interest rate, and that is the case that income has increased, you just need to increase your interest rate by a very small margin just to bring the market back to equilibrium, because the money demand is very sensitive to changes in the interest rate. On the other hand, if money demand is interest inelastic, it means it doesn't really respond to changes in interest rate, and there's an increase in income which is causing an increase in money demand. So before you can bring the market back to equilibrium, you really need to increase your interest rate, since money demand doesn't really respond to changes in interest rates. If you want people to be discouraged from holding money, then you really need to increase the interest rate by a very bigger uh, percentage before you can restore the market back to equilibrium. Okay. So whether the LM curve is going to be steep or not depends on how responsive the money demand is to interest rate. Okay. Now, I've stated that when the money demand is interest inelastic, it makes the curve steeper. Okay, it makes the curve steeper. Let's look at this diagram here. We'll go back again. I'm sure when you compare this, okay, this money demand curve and then this one, you can see the first one is steeper than the second one. Okay, so this one being more steeper means that it is not really responsive to changes in interest rate. This is our LM curve. Let's start from MDY zero. Okay, Y was zero, interest rate was R zero. Our money demand too depended on Y zero with the interest rate R zero. Now, if there's an increase in Y from Y zero to Y one, okay, that is going to cause an upward shift in the money demand curve. So this is where we are. But because the money demand is not really responsive to changes in interest rate must really increase before we can get equilibrium in the money market. That's the reason why when Y increased from Y0 to Y1, there was a very high increase in the interest rate. It's all because the demand for money is not really responsive to interest rate. So if income should increase, which is causing an increase in the demand for money, before you can discourage people or before you can induce people to hold bonds, you really need to make it look more attractive. Okay, you need to make it more attractive before you can induce people to buy bonds. That is the reason why the interest rate must be very high. So this is the case where the interest money demand is interest inelastic. It makes the curve steeper. In other words, what this means is that if you increase interest rate by say 50%, then money demand will decrease by something which is less than 50%. That means that money demand is interest inelastic, and that's why the curve is steep. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's look at what they were stating here. Now, uh, if income should go up, then the real money demand will go up. Okay. So whenever there's a given increase in Y, and then the real money demand too is moving up. So they really require a very large increase in interest rates before the money market will go back to equilibrium. And the reason is that money demand doesn't really respond to changes in um, interest rate. Okay, so if after an increase in income you want the market equilibrium to be restored, you need to really give a very large increase in interest rate before the equilibrium could be restored. Okay, and the reason is because of the low interest elasticity of money demand. So just know that whenever money demand is interest inelastic, it makes the LM curve steeper. You have to be taking note of these things. They normally come in true or false and all those things. Okay. So let's look at the other side when money demand is more interest sensitive. Okay. That is if assuming an increase in income, we know is going to result in an increase in money demand, which means there will be excess demand for money over the supply of money. So to restore equilibrium, we have to increase interest rate. But here, because money demand is very responsive to the interest rate, you don't really need to increase the interest rate much. Okay, if you want money demand to fall by 50%, you have to increase your interest rate by something less than 50%. Maybe just 10% could discourage people from demanding their money. and that's the reason why the curve is like they see that this one is less steeper. Okay. Uh-huh. So assuming we are starting from y0 with r0, this is our demand for money, MDR to y0. Now there's an increase in income. Look at the size of increase from y0 to y1. That is causing the money demand to shift upwards. There's a disequilibrium. But because the money demand is more interest sensitive, you will see the change in interest rates. It's very small, and just this small percentage increase in interest rate could bring the market back to equilibrium, all because the money demand is more sensitive to interest rates. Okay, so the the shape of the LM curve depends on the shape of the money demand curve. If it is steep, then if the money demand curve is steep, then the LM curve too is going to be steep. So, however, the money demand responds to interest rates, so will the income in the LM curve also respond to interest rates. Okay. So what this means is that assuming I'll come back to this. The news they've missed everything up. Assuming we are talking about the case where money demand is more interest sensitive. When income goes up, real money demand will go up. So, given the increase in Y, then the real money demand just requires a very small increase in interest rates to bring the market back to equilibrium. And it's all because money demand is more sensitive to changes in interest rate. Okay. So just know that as the money demand sensitivity to interest rate is increasing, then the curve is becoming flatter. Okay. But on a case where the money demand is less sensitive to interest rate, it becomes steeper. Please take note of this. When we are talking about the policy implications, we will see that if a monetary policy will be more effective, it will depend on the steepness of the curve. If fiscal policy to will be effective, it will depend on the steepness of the IS curve. When we combine them two, you see that still they will depend. Is the policy effectiveness would depend on the steepness of both the IS and then the LM. Okay, so let's take note of those things. Okay. When you take the money demand function, okay, I'm coming. Money demand, the equation can be written as C0, C1Y, sorry, minus C2R, okay. So this is the autonomous money demand, the part of or the portion of money demand that is independent of Y and R. And then this is income, this is interest rate, this is the coefficient of income. So whenever there's a change in Y, the change in the money demand would depend on this coefficient. Assuming this is 2, what this means is that whenever income increases by 1 unit, money demand will increase by 2 units. If it's 4, if income should increase by 1 unit, money demand will increase by 4 units. When you come to the interest rate too, assuming 1 is 2, 1 is 4, okay, then it means that when interest rate should increase by 1 unit, money demand will fall by 2 units or 4 units, okay. And this is what we use to check for the steepness. Which one is? Can I ask? Assuming this is money demand equation 1, this is money demand equation 2. Which of the two equations is more sensitive to interest rate? Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Hello, hello.
Hey, did you hear my question?
No,
But did you understand what I was doing here?
no, I didn't. My network is a bit bad.
What I'm trying to say is the demand for money schedule is normally in this form, okay? So MD will be equal to a constant, and then uh, Y, the component that depends on income, and then the portion that depends on interest rate. The positive sign here means that money demand is positively related to income. The minus here means that money demand is negatively related to interest rates. And I'm saying that just assuming the C1 is giving us 2, okay? What this means is if Y should increase by 1 unit, then money demand should increase by 2 units. That is if the C1 is 2. And assuming C1 is equal to 4, it means that if income should increase by 1 unit, then money demand will increase by 4 units. Okay. When you come here to with a C2 of 2, it means that if interest rate should increase by 1 unit, then money demand will increase by 2, will decrease by 2 units. And then if interest rate should increase by 1 unit for the second one, then money demand will fall by uh, 4 units. So my question was, assuming this one is money demand one schedule, and then this one is money demand two, and then you are being asked from these two schedules which one is more, which one can you say that money demand is more responsive to interest rate?
The two of them is, I think it will be the same
Why?
because with the first one we are taking 2 2, and then the second one we are taking 4 4,
No, no, no,
or
no,
we
no,
are not
no.
looking at the other side.
No, I'm just talking about interest rate, only interest rate. I'm comparing this and this, just interest rate.
Then I think the second one will be more responsive.
So which one can we say money demand is interest inelastic?
That's a bit confusing.
Audrey, Yaya,
Say,
did you get my question?
yeah,
Any idea?
please no.
Okay. Audrey Mensa, Odrumensa,
Yes.
did you get my question?
Yes.
Any idea?
Eh, please, I think it's the first one.
Why?
Please, I can't actually explain why.
Okay. I mean, when we say that uh, money demand is more sensitive to interest rate, it means that it is interest elastic. Okay, one is very sensitive, it means that it is interest elastic. And when it is less sensitive, we say it's interest inelastic. Okay, so we can see from this one that the second one, the interest is more, the money demand is more interest elastic because it is very sensitive, and this one will be less. It will be more inelastic. Is that okay?
Please, can you
Yes, thanks.
explain it again? No.
What I'm trying to say, let's talk about demand, elasticity of demand. I think we are more familiar with that. With elasticity of demand, when we say that demand is more elastic, what does it mean? Hello. All right. So this one, you see that for the LM that we've been talking about, we always start from income changing, okay, income increasing, and its effect on money demand that causes the interest rate to increase. But the change in the money demand will depend on how income elastic the money demand is. Okay, so if from this, if Y should change, the effect on money demand will depend on the value of the C1. Okay, it depends on the value of the C1. So the change in money demand is equal to the C1 times the change in Y. The change in Y is the Y2 minus Y1. So if the change in Y is say 4 and the C1 is 10, it means that as income is increasing by 4, money demand will increase by 40. Okay, money demand will increase by 40. So the change in money demand depends on the value of what? The value of C1. Okay. So what we have here, Y2 minus Y1 is our change in Y. So change in money demand should be equal to the coefficient of income times the change in income. Okay. So because of the positive sign, if the change in Y2 is positive, it means that the change in money demand too is going to be positive. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Okay. Any question? Yara, are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
Adriana,
Yes, please.
Odumeza.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So this is what we've been talking about. What makes the curve steeper or not? So we've seen that the shape of the LM curve depends on the interest elasticity of money demand. Okay, if it's inelastic, it becomes steeper. Okay, it becomes steeper, and vice versa. We need all this when we are talking about the policy implications. So I'm sure we get there. We've already spoken about this. They just missed everything. It's even possible we'll meet this thing again, but it will not be talking about what we had to talk about. This. So when you are reading it, be checking those things. They were just repeating the pages. Okay. All right. You see, we've seen this thing before. They've brought it again.